I would say first and foremost is not to do it the way I did it, which is in fits and starts over about 10 years with, surges of passion followed by disappointment and distraction.
Hello, welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, as well as consultant to plastic surgeons to get them more patients and profits. Now, today's guest is making a comeback on the show with a fresh topic. Today, we're going to talk about writing a consumer book for prospective cosmetic patients. Now, we're joined once again by Dr. Scott Miller. He's a board-certified cosmetic plastic surgeon who's been in solo practice for 27 years in absolutely gorgeous, beautiful La Jolla, California. Now, Dr. Miller, welcome to Beauty and the Biz.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I was really excited to see your book online. So tell me, let's just start with what inspired you to write a consumer book?
So for years and years, like many others, you see patient after patient after patient, and you develop your own style and take and approach and opinions. And what I found is that I had a certain take that people didn't seem to be hearing, didn't seem to be receiving that message that they found very useful. And I felt that there was information people needed to know that they weren't hearing. And I felt there was a path people needed to know about that they weren't taking. And so I just felt like it's something that I felt obligated to put out there so it could, impact people on a little bit larger scale than the one-to-one, which we all enjoy so much, but wanted to kind of put that information out for a broader audience, both for patients and for providers, particularly early in their career, to kind of take and run with it and try to elevate this standard of what plastic surgery is meaning in today's world.
So let's talk about the logistics of writing a book, because you don't understand it until you start doing it.
As you know,
You have to put together all these years and years of intellectual property and experience, and you have to put it together in a format that others can understand. It's a way bigger undertaking than you probably realize. So did you follow some kind of a structure, or how in the world did you get the thing in some kind of a readable fashion that others could get?
So I would say first and foremost is not to do it the way I did it, which is in fits and starts over about 10 years with, surges of passion followed by disappointment and distraction. So not the path to take necessarily, but I think for sure, having said that, I'm pleased because the book I wrote today isn't the book that I would have put out 10 years ago when I first had the idea and the urge. But it's grown, as have I, with my approach and knowledge and sort of paradigm, if you will. I think that you start out with a concept and you got to start putting that on paper, and you realize that your concept isn't as firm and solidified as you thought it was. And so then really trying to zoom in, I think the narrower you can make the topic, probably the more readable your book will be and the more clear your message will be. And then really defining it into chapters that follow. I'm lucky to have a brother who's an author and teaches writing. And one of the things he told me is that so many books he reads have a promise at the beginning that seems like it takes a different direction by the end. So to me, making an outline, just like we're back in school, and having your promise and your abstract and your introduction be in line with your conclusion, and then the book should take you on a path to get there. So I found that to be very helpful to keep it as a coherent whole.
I know when I wrote my book, I also, my theory was just get it all down on paper, because I also had been at this for years. I would start and stop. And they say there are two ways to write a book. Either hide yourself off in a log cabin somewhere and get it done, or
Yes.
you do the, like I personally was doing the 1 hour a morning, but it took me 2 years to do that. I had to block the time, get it done. And then I had way too much of a book. Let's say it was 500 pages. And thank God I had somebody in the industry who also knows books. And he read it and he said, "Oh, Catherine, Pare this down. It is too much,
It's
too much.
five books. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thankfully, it's down. It went down to like, 240 pages at the most. It's a quicker read. And I'm just so grateful for that. So it's just funny because the book, like you said, it takes 10 years to write it. And then how much time did it take you to actually get serious and, like, let's say, get it prepared for market?
Yeah, it's funny that you said that. So exactly what you said. What happens, I had an idea. I did a little burst of material using material I had, combining it, trying to repurpose it and format it. And then I got disappointed because I didn't like what I had. And so then I just kind of moved on. As you said, we're busy working in the meantime, right? So running a busy practice, raising a busy family. And so once I got kind of to a point of self-disgust and self-loathing that I had not done what I said I would do, which is one of the core tenets in this book, of integrity. I kind of sat down and I did what you said. I started chunking it and just saying, you know what? I'm just going to commit an hour every morning. I can get up and commit an hour every morning to plugging away and plugging away. And I'd say once I did that, it was about a year and a half still to kind of get it to where like I could read it and feel like there was deliverables. There was really something which, I'm not trying to be Gertrude Stein or Ernest Hemingway, but there was somebody could read it, enjoy it, it flowed, and there was takeaways. I really felt really strongly about wanting to make sure there was takeaways. There's takeaways for the patient who's interested in plastic surgery. There's takeaways for the provider who's interested in knowing how somebody else is doing it in a way that seems to be working. And I wanted to basically feel like I had said my piece. And really, I got to a point where I was far enough onto my career. I said to myself, well, I got to finish this while I'm still practicing. So that was kind of a big surge of energy to get it done. And again, in a way that I could hold my head high and stand by it and feel proud about it, et cetera.
Yeah. So then how did you get it to market? Was your brother the editor or because half of this, a really important role is the editor, the one who finally finalizes it, but then you still have to lay it out, send it to, what was your process like to get it to market?
Yeah, I reached out to some publishers that seemed to publish books in that same general arena. I talked to a couple of colleagues who had done something adjacent or vaguely similar and got some ideas of who they had worked with and who worked well. And so I came upon a publisher that had a broad array of experience and could help guide me as to some of the choices you make in that arena, like what your particular kind of niches you're going for and who you're trying to most appeal to, what audience. I think you have to really be cognizant of the audience that you're writing to and who's reading it. I had all my staff read it because they're all basically my target demographic, including my wife, and kind of go through it. And then, reaching out to publishers and finding the one that was sort of most full service. They weren't completely independent and, send it to us perfectly formed. And yet it also wasn't one of these like, we'll write a book, switch the cover and the pictures and that's your book. No, this is my book. That was very important to me that it be my book with my message. So that's kind of how it went. I thought, but my colleagues were super helpful in terms of giving advice to people who had ventured into that area before.
I personally went the self-published route because I have such a niche market. There are not many plastic surgeons, so there's no way I was ever going to get any reach other than my own efforts. But you went to consumer, and there is a huge market for that. So I definitely recommend getting help to get that out there.
Exactly.
I think you're doing a pretty good job with the marketing aspect. But before we get to that, what would you say is the biggest misconception of cosmetic patients wanting plastic surgery? Did you get that across in the book?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of, I think the biggest misconception is that plastic surgery is all about fleeting trends and exaggerated results. And it's exactly the opposite. It's about results that look natural, feel personal, and stand the test of time. And that's completely doable with modern techniques and with a personalized approach. So I think that people think plastic surgery is about erasing individuality, and it's exactly the opposite. It's about restoring youthful vitality in a way that respects and honors each patient's uniqueness.
Right. The book goes into a lot of um, think differently about picking a surgeon. You went
Yes,
to great lengths to make sure they're clear who you should be looking for a surgeon, and he's
yes.
not necessarily on TikTok, let's say. You did a very good job of that
Thank you.
and positioning your like. How do people pick a surgeon in today's world? It is insane. The guy
Yeah, it's very difficult.
yeah, I mean, as a consumer, I don't even know how you. I mean, if you're picking the top guy on Instagram, is that really the variable, or is that the right one? Is
Yeah, I mean, I think you could start wherever you want, but like to me, but then you have to whittle down, and I think that you start with the actual objective facts. I mean, what's the person trained in? Who's the person trained with? Where did the person train? I mean, you want to obviously for the lay person, you want to look for a board certified plastic surgeon. That's who wants to go into plastic surgery in the first place. Other people migrate to cosmetic surgery, but board certified plastic surgeons are drawn to the field of plastic surgery. So you want somebody where they feel like their native skills will be useful and optimized in that area. Those are the people who feel they'll be actualized in that field. Then once you get there, you want to look for people who are practicing in a certain way. I do think there's a huge, you got to have the hands, but you got to have the head, and then you got to have the heart. And I think there's a huge place for each patient to use their own. I call it the gut. In the book, I talk about your gut feeling, and your gut feeling when you're all grown up is a very real thing. It's your intuition. Trust your gut. And I provide, as you know, a lot of checklists in the book, checklists and tools to decide not only maybe whether you should have surgery, what you should do, but also with whom you should do it and what to look for in the offices. When, style is nice, but substance is far more important.
The smartest practices know a big part of their practice growth comes from retention, referrals, and repeat treatments, not just from new internet stranger leads. That's why I created the KISS Loyalty Club, a done-for-you system that keeps your patients returning, referring, reviewing, sharing you on social media, and completing surgery. Discover how KISS can grow your own practice revenues by visiting kissloyalty.com today.
You did a very good job with patient stories. I say this all the time. It's so much better when somebody else says it to the patient, when the patient says it to the patient. It's just so much more authentic. And you have some really great stories, and you're very good about handling those objections that they have in their mind. It comes out in the book, things that they're saying to themselves, but they might not be saying out loud, or certainly not even saying it to you. You're dispelling some of those objections, and it's just crazy what people think nowadays about things after being on the internet so much. A lot of it is just misinformation,
Right.
downtime and expectations. Do you find that the book has helped with patient expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it helps. It helps on two ways. It helps us as an office remember who we are. You think it, you feel it, you believe it, you want to be it. But when you write it down for yourself and read it for yourself, and everyone else reads it, we use the book like a book club. So at every office meeting, we discuss a chapter and we go around and around and around. So it makes you, in the book I say DWISYWD, do what you say you will do and be who you say you are. And so I think it's a great reminder for us. And then we're giving it, we have our patients have this book, whether they bought it before or whether we share it with them when they come in. So, we're handing them this thing saying, look for this, look for this, look for this, demand this, demand this, demand this. Well, then we better be that, right? So I think it helps with patient expectations, both the ones that need to be tempered and the ones that need to be higher. I think modern medical care has expected people to practically be abused in a doctor's office. And I don't want anybody putting up with that. On the other hand, we have to temper the unrealistic expectations that some marketing and media can provoke. So yeah, I think it's helped with both those factors. But the biggest thing, the great thing about writing it down is it reminds you, now you've said it, you put it out there in the world, and you have it to live up to. What you think you are and you want to be, you wrote down and shared, and now you have to act on that and live up to that. So I think it gives patients something to expect. It gives us something to demand of ourselves. And it just clarifies what everyone's expecting out of that doctor-patient relationship, out of that office-patient relationship. And, for me, it's great because I have a relatively small staff and we're all in sync and we all feel very passionate about living up to the standard that we believe we have and want to. So it's been a great tool for that, both for clarity with our patients, for our patients, and with ourselves.
Right? That standard of excellence, you put it in writing, and that's the difference. You told the
Yeah.
world, this is what I stand for.
Yeah.
And you're right. Now you have to back it up. And what a great, I love the book club idea. I really do. The thing about staff I have noticed is it's a very repetitive, consistent training and
Yeah.
talking about customer service and how important patients are. If you don't, we humans can lax, we just don't keep it up. And there's nothing easy about that. When you want to be the best, you do things that others won't do. And you just did that. It's a big deal.
Like when I started with a lot of your scripts and they're super helpful. Obviously, eventually you want people to incorporate that into their own self and identity, but they have to start with something and some substance. And, for me, it drives me crazy when I call an office and they don't know where the doctor trained or who the doctor is or what the doctor's about. That stuff is absolutely essential. And as we know, we try to minimize it. We're very fortunate that we have a very stable staff, but there is turnover in that regard from time to time. And that's where going back to those scripts comes in handy then to then build back up off of that again and have it be intuitive and obvious. But by going through the book, it really includes the staff in my history and our practice's history. So they feel a part of it and they can relate it so that patients can make better decisions because we feel really great about who we are, and what we do. But a patient can't know that. A patient makes a phone call, has a discussion and comes in. So the more you share with them about your story, if you want, or your narrative, the more they can feel like they know what they're choosing. I just want people to make great choices. Obviously, we love to be that choice, but I want people to make great choices. It makes me so sad when I see people have a bad experience with our field. And I want people to have better experiences. And I really believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. So, this book is my attempt to kind of share what we're doing that seems to work in the hope that it helps patients, in the hope that it helps providers. And if it is kind of a fun aspect of the practice, that's even all the better. It's definitely given us something to be very excited about and enthusiastic about. We're excited about it, and just sharing it with patients. It's something new in the practice other than a laser or a new machine or something like that. And I think it's so much more substantive than those things can be.
Well, I like the checklist a lot because you're telling the patients what to ask their surgeons, and it will absolutely identify who's on their game and who isn't, and who's board certified and who isn't, and that kind of thing. So I like
Who's
that.
board certified and who cares about you and who looks at you and talks to you, and who like we talk about in the meet and greet section, who seems to be interested in you versus just throwing out a couple of tidbits and then seeing if you want to bite. I think that patients deserve to be seen as individuals, and patients are better served when they're seen as individuals. And I think we as providers benefit when we have that relationship. It's all so much more fun and rewarding.
Right. And if there is a problem or something comes up, the saying is they won't sue you if they like you. So
Yes.
if you build that relationship, they are much more forgiving when
Yeah.
go sideways.
Well, that's when it all matters, honestly. If everything's super smooth, then that's great. And we want people to have that wow experience. But if everything's smooth, they're at least going to have that, good experience. It's when the road gets a little rocky that the relationship is tested. And, to me, I think of plastic surgery as like going on a trip. We're going on a trip together and we need to all be on the same page and kind of enjoy that journey as well.
Saying that, I wonder if the patient expectations are super high now, because when you read your book, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm thinking you're the best. I read it.
Okay.
I'm thinking big, 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 big.
Absolutely.
Could that backfire on you, or you're good to go?
that's something I fully accept, and
Yeah.
we embrace that challenge. So yes, I see your point, and even as I was writing parts of it, telling people expect this, but we welcome that challenge. I think we're honest about results and the variability of such, and the aspects of physiology and the things that go into your results, be they your pre-op medical and physiologic state, the surgery we do and the preparation, the ERAS, early recovery after surgery protocols we follow, and then, your natural healing, and all that plays into healing. I think we go into that extensively, but we also go into the parts that we can play in that and how we try to play them our best. And I think that's what we can commit to patients. And we do, is that we commit to, vigilant care, meticulous surgery, and dedicated follow-up.
I did notice you were limited on the photos, the before and after photos. I have written a book for another surgeon before, and I said I would never do it again, and I never will because
Yeah.
it was ridiculous. But we filled it up with before and after photos because we were so busy trying to do social proof. But in your case, it was minimal. Was that intentional, or what was your thought process on before and after photos?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this day and age, there's plenty of websites. We have stuff on TouchMD and things we can refer people to. So I didn't want it to just be a kind of a dig me wall full of before and after photos. And I didn't want to show people, horrendous things that then we fixed and things like that, and big challenges. I didn't want to scare people from surgery, but it wasn't meant to entice people to surgery. It was just meant to inform people. So I have a few photos there of what I consider fairly typical results that we get to give them an idea of what we're talking about. There's breast augmentations that are moderate. There's breast augmentations that are bigger. There's people who have a face and neck lift with a waddle, and there's people who are looking for earlier restoration. So I wanted to understand the range of what those words that can be the same words but mean quite different procedures can be. But and understanding the procedures with diagrams and stuff, but I didn't want it to just turn into a wall of gallery photos, which I think is plentiful on the internet.
Gotcha. Now, how did you get to market? How did you introduce it to the marketplace?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a matter of working with the publisher and deciding on the page count, deciding on, even just color photos or black and white, right? That kind of thing. And then the role of the photos, as you mentioned in the book, it's basically they submitted everything. The publisher took care of, submitting everything to publication, but we definitely had to decide which categories we were shooting for example. And so you sign up and you pick what categories you think it mainly fills and that you really like it. And then there's secondary and tertiary, but that's going to be your main goal and where you're going to kind of put your efforts. Right now we have a Kindle special. So basically, Amazon does that. The book was selling quite well and doing well, better than expected. And so then Amazon just spontaneously lowered the price because they saw the momentum. So Amazon does that kind of on their own. But then by offering a little bit lower quite lower on the Kindle, then that's sort of meant to kind of increase the distribution when it kind of hits that post-immediate publication lull. So they have all these techniques that I don't claim to know all about, but they've kept us informed and we've worked with them. As far as our own efforts, what we did is reach out to our patient base and personal contacts and just let people know that it's out there. I think a big part of your decision is, are you making this just for an internal marketing kind of practice book? Or is this something you really want to get out into the broader public? So, and I'd say I went back and forth on that, but I really felt like I had a message to share. And my idea was I've shared it with the people in our practice to some degree, although not to quite as substantive as this. But I really wanted to try to hit a broader market and touch people that I wouldn't otherwise be able to get that message to and help guide them to navigate their own journey. So in that respect, that kind of affected how we did it, right? Because we didn't just want to send it out to a bunch of people because then you don't get the sales and reviews and things like that. It doesn't allow it to really accumulate that momentum. So that's kind of how we went about it.
What I noticed, so one thing about Amazon that has not been helpful is you have to sell your book on Amazon. They're a major backlink for you and your website. They're just killer for your SEO if you set it up correctly.
Mhm.
The one issue is, though, they don't share with you who bought it.
Oh,
So
right.
Yeah, I have lots of doctors who buy the darn book without me knowing it, and that
Right.
like my book isn't set up that way. I need to know who you are so I can
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
get to know you. And so I've always sold my book every which way I can think of.
Right.
But it's usually some kind of a landing page or a purchase page, and I'm asking you what's your name and number and address, and but Amazon will shoot it out for you. But I want to know who it is, so we actually handle our own fulfillment. But in your case, you're a consumer, so you have a lot going on, so you need Amazon big time, and you need
Exactly.
Kindle. Yeah,
Yeah, no, we need them.
yeah,
Amazon and Barnes and Noble, a couple other vendors, but Amazon's the big elephant on the field. So you're absolutely right. You need them to build momentum and stuff like that. And then, I mean, I think if I was for you, I would suggest maybe what the best thing you could do is have a call to action in the book that requires them to reach out to you in some way for an added value, right? Hidden chapter. I've heard of things people doing that with secret chapters and things like that. But I see the dilemma both ways. Yeah, for us, we really weren't looking at it as a way. Our phones ring, so we're very fortunate in that regard. So we really weren't. I'm not going to deny there's a helpful practice component to having it out there, but that wasn't the main thrust. So that the main thrust was to put the message out there and as an internal guide for us to, live up to all we think we are, want to be, etc. But I think if you're doing it just more internally to generate, then I think you have to have some kind of call to action in that regard.
yeah. A little secret: if you're going to put links in your book,
Yeah,
you have to keep up with them. All of our links are broken because we don't even have the same web page we used to have. And then we have all these
yeah.
redirects going on. And you really have, it's like a chess game. If I do this, will it still be okay 5 years from now or 10 years from
No,
now?
and then the publishers actually told me that is they told
Yeah.
me like there's people who just put their book out there, and if they don't keep attention on it, it might do okay at first, it might not, but then it'll just wallow, out there in the bookosphere, I guess. So yeah, they said basically it'll if you keep paying attention to it, if you keep energizing that, once it gets momentum, and that's what we're trying to do now. We've done very well in an array of categories, and so we're very excited about that. It's neat to me to know that there's people that I've never met or talked to that
Yeah.
are reading that and are hearing what my 2 cents that I feel is impactful, and that we've had patients who feel is impactful. And so I like the idea of changing and improving the quality of care in plastic surgery. And that sounds lofty, but I think in some cases it's wanting because it's such a commoditized field, the way some people sort of play it out. And I hate that. That's not the way I was raised. That's not the way I was trained. I have a son in medical school. That's not what I want him to learn and teach. And so I really want this to hopefully change the way people perceive plastic surgery and pursue plastic surgery, and in some cases, the way people can provide plastic surgery.
Well, your timing couldn't be better because AI really is usurping SEO. It's really mixing things up. And chat, so many patients now, when I say, how did you hear about us? They'll
Yeah.
say chat GTP. The thing about AI that because people are going to ask, who's the best surgeon? And they're going to pick authenticity, and nothing's more authentic than you writing your own book in your own words, in your own
Right.
name. And that's just killer SEO and authority. Have you noticed that? Do you feel any differently now being an author? It actually kind of changed my identity a bit. I thought, look at me, I'm an author now. It helped.
There's a certain, so as I mentioned, when I was saying I was going to do it and intended to do it, wanted to do it, and wasn't following through, there's a fair amount of self-loathing from a self-demanding competitive person. So yeah, I mean, I have some, I don't know if it's pride or just self-acceptance that I got done what I intended to do. And I feel like I am proud of the way it turned out and that message we put out there. And I think it just validates, it's brand validation. I when I was early in my career, I was at one of the big meetings. I was at the Aesthetic Society in Orlando, and I saw a surgeon who was presenting 30 years and 30,000 patients or something like that. It was 30 years and 3,000 facelifts, I think was the name of the doc. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because this was not a big name. This was not somebody who's on the podium all the time. This is not somebody who everyone had heard of. And he gave this talk and he had like 10 points and he was top 10 and he was going through them. And he was, not an experienced speaker, and he was going through and he got through about 5 or 6. And then his time was off and the moderator cut him off. And then at the end of after all the speakers, they took questions. And the first question somebody said is, I really want to hear the other 4 or 5 points.
Yeah.
Everybody appreciated hearing from somebody's wisdom that they had accumulated the hard way. Now you can have 1 year of experience 30 times or 30 years of experience, presuming you're doing deliberate practice and learning and growing. There's a huge value in that, not just mine, but others as well. And to share that on a grander scale is really rewarding. So yeah, it makes you feel good about, but I never wanted to be the person speaking 2 years into my practice as if I knew everything. I really wanted to feel like it was coming from a place of substance. So I don't feel like I'm better than I was before I wrote the book. I feel like the book does help provide a little social validation to the branding and identity that we already had, which is great.
Well, I know it's a great differentiator, especially where you're at. It's super competitive where you're at.
Yeah.
Have you noticed the patients reacting differently now that you've got a book?
So our patients so far, the experience we've had is they're excited for us and with us. They think it's awesome that, because this is a curated crowd of people who already are patients and are already coming to the office, but they are excited about who we are and what we do, and they're excited that we put it in a more substantive, shareable form, and they're excited to share it with their friends. So I think there will be a little downstream, trickle from that for sure on a sort of just down and dirty kind of scale. But I think they're very excited for us. They're part of the family. So.
In terms of patient lead generation, I think a book is brilliant for that. One of the things it's going to do is help you select an audience. As the years have gone on, especially anyone trying to do Google Ads, they've increased in fees like 30 to 40% in the last 3 years because they've taken away the audience selection. They used to let us say, okay, I just want people to see this ad who are female, this age, this geography, these interests, and they keep taking more and more of that away. But this book, if they buy your book, they're literally raising their hand. I'm interested in cosmetic surgery. Because right now, when you're trying to do ads, you have to just say, okay, I'm interested in females. Like that's about all you get to say. Females, maybe there's some age, maybe a little geography, but it's brutal. So the book have you found the book to be a good lead gen piece?
Sure. And the catch is as you age, your practice age becomes more mature, more sophisticated crowd, our number one, I've always been a little bit allergic to just blatant ads. I was just uncomfortable with them personally. I have no judgment, but I don't have a problem promoting the book because I feel like the book has value. So it gives me something to promote that who's getting who. It helps promote us in an indirect way. But I'm more comfortable sharing the book and promoting the book than just promoting myself. Number one. Number two is for us, putting out random stuff or not focused stuff is not really helpful if we get a million calls for people looking for plastic surgery at a different level and at a different price point because of where we are in the marketplace. We're a sophisticated, mature practice that has all its, I's dotted, T's crossed, and things kind of smoothly running. And that's, there are certain people who would respond to some marketing efforts at a base level that would be a waste of time for us to fill up the consults with. So it's bringing in people who have been given the book by a friend or suggested the book by a friend who they're coming because of their friend and because they read the book and because they're not expecting that we're kind of the basement level plastic surgery practice.
I guarantee your conversion rates are better if they've read the book than if they haven't. Yeah. I guarantee it.
Yeah. And again, I think that's all. I'm not, Pollyanna about the benefits that come from that and well aware of that. And that's one of the reasons like I said, I was kind of frustrated myself when I was getting it out because like the idea of writing it when I'm just about to retire, it didn't really appeal to me. But I think that by having those as side benefits and if you keep the focus with writing the book and putting the book out on reaching, educating, and empowering, then I do think the other stuff, as long as you set things up right, like you said, with the different features of links and things, then the other stuff comes along for the ride. I've always felt that way, even about our practice. I'm not saying you couldn't potentially not have a successful practice, even if you were attentive to patients and did good surgery. But if you have things set up right, have the right people in the right paradigm, I do think you can pay attention to the quality of what you're doing and the relationships, and the other part takes care of itself if you have the right infrastructure. And so we've had the right infrastructure because we have a great staff and all that. That's all pre-existing. And now we just have to make sure that we kind of follow through on what we do. And again, the book helps tell people what we do and who we are. And then it helps remind us of that as well. So I just want people to feel more empowered when they go into a position. They can use these tools and checklists. They can use the concern, cause, and correction chart that I suggest in there. They can use the decision aid that takes into account where a patient takes into account the aggravating factors of their feature that's bothering them, the improvement potential after discussing it with their provider, and then maybe the downside considerations. They can rate those on a scale of 1 to 5, put them into an equation. And again, I'm not turning the decision to have plastic surgery into a mathematical Einsteinian equation. But what it does do is it gives you something that makes you really think. We have questions that people use in determining their rating in each of those categories. And that provides a tremendous amount of introspection for them on how important this really is to them. I mean, I want to operate on people, but make no mistake, but I want to operate on people who will benefit from my surgery, both physically and psychologically, and will be happy. I don't know any surgeons, certainly not the ones that I hang out with, who want people who look great but are unhappy or displeased in some features. So we want to filter for the ideal patient for our practice, and I want to help patients filter themselves for whether things are right or wrong for them. And I think when that happens, ideally, everybody wins.
For sure. So what would you advise other surgeons to do who think they want to write a book?
I would say make sure you want to write a book because it's a lot of work, as you indicated in the beginning. I would say clarify this is going back to college, right? What's your thesis? What's your point? What's your purpose, as you indicated, because you might set it up differently with different purposes in mind of the book. Who's your audience? And then, put together an outline of your thoughts. And, I think if you wanted to start the most crudely, you could do the kind of like, I think they call it read to book or dictate to book, but I wouldn't write your whole book that way. But that's not a horrible way to get a rough draft on paper, but I would do it from an outline. Otherwise, it's going to be a rambling mess. And then once you do that, read it over again, refine your thesis, refine your conclusion, refine your outline, what you want to put in it. But I would say it's a tremendous amount of work. I think that for the money, and especially when you factor in the money value of time, I think it will have its payoff, but I don't know that you do it for the financial payoff. I think you do it because you feel passionate about having something to say and wanting to say it and put it out there, both for yourself and for others. I really think so. I do think there's a payoff, but I think that I think there's also other things you could have done with that time that would have had a payoff.
If you're doing it for the money, you're going to be sorely mistaken.
Exactly.
It's all these other benefits you get from it, and they're long lasting too, because a book lasts a lot longer than an ad or a blog post. There's a lot to go through, though. I just wouldn't go in willy-nilly. Like you've got to devote some time to this project.
Exactly. I think it should be brand confirmation, not brand creation.
But by the way, where do you think this field is going? What do you think is going on?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's gonna sort of split off. I really do. I don't think you're gonna see. I think that the ancillary providers, I sadly, I don't think that's going anywhere away anyway anytime soon. And I think that's going to expand. So I think you're going to see more and more med spas, nurse practitioners, other specialties, non-surgical specialties, getting involved in more and more of the non-surgical or minimally invasive stuff. So you're either going to compete in that market and prepare to jump into a big pool, or you're going to really focus on the surgery and really refining. But I think that's going to be an area where there's more and more, there's going to be less and less surgeons doing more and more of the surgery at the high end and in a refined way, because you're not going to be able to have the other aspects to sort of lean on to support the practice. So I think it's going to kind of splinter off even more into surgical, minimally invasive, and non-invasive at all. I don't think you're going to see as much of that under one roof. When you do see it under one roof, it's going to be almost like different silos. So it could work in that way, but that's what I would anticipate. Not what I would hope for, but what I would sort of predict.
Yeah. Last question. What's next for you?
So, I mean, again, it's interesting you say that. If you look back at my weekly calendars and to-do list, you would have seen this as one of my top 3 things I want to accomplish over and over and over and over in almost a comical kind of way. So that's an interesting question. Now that what do you do when you got to the, destination? So right now, just really focused on making sure people get access, know about, have the availability of getting the book in their hands or on their Kindle, and really, getting that information out there. So that's kind of like I'm kind of always on to the next thing. So right now, that's the next thing, now that it's written and out there and published, which is super fun and cool. But like, I actually want people to get at it. I don't just want it to float out there. And then as always, in parallel, keeping the focus on our patients. So we're just loving the fact, what I do love about this field is that we're always continually getting better. I have people in other fields of medicine and my friends who do other things completely, and they talk about, getting bored or retired or like that. But I mean, I feel like I worked really hard to be where we are right now, and I feel like our results are better than ever, and the product that we can produce for the patients is better than ever. So it's super exciting, and really just enjoying that. It's okay. There's a book called Little Giants, I think that's what it was called. And it was about, like, basically the theme of the book was, in businesses, you don't have to scale. You don't always have to scale. It's okay to just enjoy what you're doing, do great things for great people, and enjoy that process. So that's kind of what we're doing with our practice, and enjoying that, and enjoying the process of the book, the fruits of the book, and sharing that information. So that's what we're doing right now. I think moving into the future, I might zoom in on a couple of the chapters. A lot of my passion is certainly in that part 2. Part 1 provides a trusted roadmap and guide for people who are looking at plastic surgery, hopefully with some fun stories. Part 2 involves our practice model of passion for performance and quality, integrity, safety, and service, and hopefully gives us something for patients to look for and providers to maybe look to. And part 3 debunks a lot of myths and simplifies the process with the checklists and tools we talked about. My big passion is that part in the middle. And I would love to even, work together to kind of really zoom in on the paradigms of plastic surgery and the structures of your practice that allow you to enjoy yourself, get great results, and provide great results for patients. And I think a lot of that is in the infrastructure. It's in the setup of your practice. And I think people spend so much time trying to make the phone ring and make the internet click that they forget that part, that once you get that first patient, the key is to turn that into 5 more patients. And the way you do that is the way you take care of and the results you provide for that patient. And the fact that people have a false narrative of plastic surgery, that they think you have to be overdone or undercorrected, is out there. And I think we fight that. We can fight that with our words, but we fight it better with our actions.
The last comment I have is, we never said the name of the book. So what's the name of the book, and where can they find it?
Exactly. I appreciate that. The name of the book is Authentic Beauty. Okay. Authentic Beauty, Defining a New Standard of Care and Results in Plastic Surgery. And that's because that's just the word we kept coming back to when we were thinking about it, writing it, and putting it out there. Authentic, authentic, authentic. I think today's plastic surgery is not, as I said, fleeting trends and exaggerated results. It's authentic, personal feeling results that last. So we want to be as authentic as an office. Our patients want to look authentic to who they are. And that's the book, Authentic Beauty. So
Did you buy that website too, by the way? What authenticbeauty.com?
I did not, because the advice I got from the publisher was that you're better off just using your website, not having a book website. And that name, we tried to grab the domain, but it's out there. There's a couple murder mysteries, a couple thrillers, and that's why this is Authentic Beauty, defining a new standard for care and results in plastic surgery. Authentic Beauty, you can find a couple of creative books that are probably fantastic. I haven't read them, but they're nothing about what we're talking about in this book.
All right. Your website is Miller Cosmetic Surgery for anybody who wants to check it out. Yes. I assume you're selling the book on your website?
Yes. We have a link to the Amazon. So we're not selling it on the website. We just have a link to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and the different vendors right now.
Okay. Are you actively promoting it on social media?
Yes.
Okay. Well, do you know what your handle is? Is it also on Instagram? Is it Miller Cosmetic Surgery?
It's got to be Miller Cosmetic Surgery. I should know better, but I want it. But yeah, it's Miller Cosmetic Surgery for sure. And yeah, we've just shared. And again, the way we've promoted it, if you will, is by sharing our journey, by sharing our excitement. And I've got my current staff. I've got as people get married, get pregnant, move for a variety of reasons. So I have, after over 25 years, this network of past staff who still appreciate their time here. And so they've been great at picking it up. They're excited for us as well. So that's been the most enjoyable part, is seeing the excitement that people have for you. It kind of reminds you that you really have friends and supporters. I think in medicine, we do a lot and think a lot about what we can do for other people. And it's really been rewarding to see friends, family, patients, and acquaintances step up for me in supporting this endeavor.
Yeah. I think it would be great for required reading for anybody who wants to work for you,
Absolutely. Yeah.
First, before they even get the interview. I think that's such a good litmus test. Will they read it?
Will they read it? Do they read it? Quiz them on board for onboarding. Exactly. This is the best onboarding manual ever, because if you know this book, you know us, and you know whether you belong with us.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap it up now. I just want to thank you for writing the book. I know what it takes to do that. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
It's nothing easy about that, but pays off in so many ways. And I'm sure you're really proud of yourself. So congratulations. Everyone, that's going to wrap it up for us today. If you've got any feedback for me, would you please, number one, give me a review and subscribe? That'd be terrific to Beauty in the Biz podcast. And then if you have any questions or feedback, you can certainly leave them on my website at catherinemaley.com, or you can always DM me on Instagram at catherinemaley.mba. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
The fastest way to success is to model other successful surgeons who have what you want, but you can only see their results, not the path they took to get there. So you continue to jump from one thing to another, hoping to find something that will work for you too. But it rarely does. So try this shortcut instead. It's guaranteed to move you forward. I compiled my intellectual property to grow cosmetic revenues, everything I've gleaned over the years, into one playbook of the most successful practices and what they do to win. Go to cosmeticpracticevault.com and let's grow your cosmetic revenues.